No one expected the silence to break the way it did. For almost 2 days, Ottawa had been humming with the dull unease that comes only when too many questions go unanswered. Officials whispered, aides rushed in patterns that looked frantic even from a distance, and the public, glued to their screens, waited for a statement that never seemed to come. And then, sometime past midnight in Washington, President Trump, without warning, released a message. A terse, jagged line of text pushed across every platform at once. No context, no explanation, only a promise that something was coming, something bigger than they think. It sent a shiver through two capitals at the same time. But the true shockwave arrived at dawn. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, normally reserved, measured, a man whose calm seemed engineered in a laboratory, broke the quiet with a reply that startled even his closest advisors. No elaborate phrasing, no diplomatic distancing. Just 2 words captured across every feed, on every network within minutes. Not today. At first, no one knew what he meant. Reporters scrambled to interpret it, analysts speculated wildly, and cabinet ministers tried to maintain the usual expressions of collected professionalism. But beneath that composure, something was undeniably trembling. What exactly had Carney pushed back against? And why did those 2 words feel more like a warning than a rebuttal? Some claimed there had been a leak earlier that week. Not a document, not anything that could even be cited, just a whisper from an unnamed staffer suggesting that discussions between Ottawa and Washington had derailed into something unusually sharp. Others dismissed it as nothing more than political gossip. But the timing of Trump's midnight message and Carney's early morning reply was too perfect, too clean, almost scripted. Still, Carney refused to elaborate. He stepped out briefly in front of the press gallery, offering only a thin half-smile and a vague line about maintaining clarity in uncertain moments. The words made sense, but the tone didn't. It carried something harder underneath, something uncharacteristically final. For the first time, people wondered what Carney might be holding back and what Trump might be hinting at. Theories spiraled faster than officials could dismiss them. Some insisted Trump's message referred to an internal policy shift, one he hadn't yet unveiled. Others were certain it pointed toward a cross-border directive that Carney had outright rejected. A few spoke in hushed voices about an alleged late-night call between the two leaders, one that supposedly ended before either side reached a conclusion. None of this was confirmed, of course, but the absence of clarity only made every guess feel more dangerously plausible. Then, just as the frenzy threatened to boil over, something else happened, subtle enough to miss, but unmistakable to those who were paying attention. Carney's communications office quietly issued a separate statement. No commentary, no explanation, only a note emphasizing that the government remains fully prepared for any scenario. It was the kind of phrasing governments usually avoid, the kind that suggests preparation for something the public hasn't yet been told about. And yet, even as speculation stretched to the breaking point, both leaders went silent again. Trump made no follow-up remark. Carney offered no clarification. Entire news cycles rolled forward without a whisper from either side, as though both men had stepped deliberately away from the microphone at the exact same moment. This silence became its own kind of message, one that no official dared translate out loud. By the 3rd day, commentators began replaying Carney's 2-word declaration obsessively. Not today. Each person found a new inflection, a new meaning, a new hint of something that might or might not be there. Was it defiance? Prudence? A warning to someone unnamed? It didn't matter. The phrase had taken on a life of its own, reshaping the mood in both countries in ways no one could fully track. Behind closed doors, aides continued to move with an urgency that suggested more was happening than the public could see. In Washington, a cluster of advisors arrived at unusual hours. In Ottawa, something similar. Quiet meetings, long nights, faces that seemed a bit too serious to ignore. Still, no official admitted to anything extraordinary. And then, just when it felt like the tension had reached its natural limit, a single report emerged. Uncorroborated, unconfirmed, instantly controversial. It claimed that someone close to the process had overheard a phrase during a closed meeting. They can demand it, but they can't have it. Whether it was said by Carney, an aide, or no one at all, its mere existence reignited everything. If Carney was refusing something, what was it? If Trump was hinting at something bigger than they think, what had he intended to reveal next? And if both men were preparing for any scenario, what scenario required that kind of coordination or confrontation? The questions multiplied. The answers didn't. But even as the world tried to decipher the meaning, something else began to shift. Quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, people close to the administration in Washington reported an unusual pattern. Meetings scheduled, then abruptly canceled, briefings prepared, then locked away before anyone outside the inner circle could read them. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, a few MPs hinted, carefully, cautiously, that the Prime Minister's words had been necessary. They wouldn't say more. They couldn't. Yet the phrasing lingered. Necessary for what? By now, the public had become investigators, picking apart every syllable spoken by either leader over the past month. Old interviews resurfaced. Archived speeches were clipped, analyzed, slowed down, replayed frame by frame as if coded messages were hidden in the pauses. Nothing definitive appeared, of course, but it didn't matter. The uncertainty itself had become fuel. Then came the most unsettling twist, a rumor that somewhere inside one of the federal departments, no one agreed on which, someone had been instructed to stand by. The words were vague enough to mean anything, yet ominous enough to mean everything. Experts debated it furiously, but not one official stepped forward to clarify. And still, Carney did not speak again. Trump did not explain. The silence between them stretched thin as wire. Every hour it held, the sense grew that both leaders were waiting, not for each other, but for something approaching from outside the frame entirely. By week's end, the public had nothing but fragments, a midnight message, a morning rebuttal, a phrase that held more force than explanation, and a silence that felt deliberate from two of the most watched leaders in the world. Yet in the middle of all of it, despite the rumors, despite the noise, Carney's words remained the gravitational center. Simple, stark, echoing long after they were spoken. Not today. And if those two words were meant as reassurance, they failed spectacularly. If they were meant as resistance, no one knew against what. If they were meant as a warning, then the warning had only begun. Because every hour that passed without an explanation made one thing unmistakably clear. Whatever happened that night, whatever triggered Trump's message and Carney's reply, was not over. Not dismissed. Not forgotten. Not settled. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, not today was only the beginning.